Dave Fowler. You're watching EMGtv, and this is 5 minutes with me and EMG. Probably my favorite thing to play, and it's usually a sound check thing. I heard this riff, this thing, in the middle of the night when I was still living at home. And I always kept my old original 66 jazz bass by the bed. And I kept hearing what I'm about to play for you. But it had a lot of ghost notes in it, and I wasn't as fluent with ghost notes then as I am now. So it took me a few hours. I think I woke up at like 3 in the morning hearing this in my head, and it was driving me nuts. And then I had the task of, well, am I gonna remember it tomorrow? After I sat there and sounded it out in my head. But it goes like this, and it's out of E, it's a. So it's just a little thing that I heard in my head, and I eventually wrote it into a song years later in a band I had, but never really did anything. But it was just something that I thought was cool, and I've always had this affinity for ghost notes and how they can work in and around bass lines and songs. And so that's how I came up with it. I just heard that in my head and got out of bed and sat there and messed with it until I figured it out. There's a thing, something that every bass player that plays traditional country should be able to play, in my opinion, is a real simple. It's like if you're playing in G and you're transitioning, going to the 4 chord like so. There's a little stumble ghost note thing that's really common, and it was on a lot of old school records you can find out there, but it'd be like this. It's just a little, when you go from the 1 to the 4 chord, usually is where that works the best. But I think, if you're playing traditional country music, and there are a lot of you guys out there that play, all over the country, play traditional country. There's a lot of great stuff out there that you probably have overlooked or just never heard of. But if you go back and study some of the old records, it's out there for the taking. Boy, if I had to pick between the P or the J pickup, that's really difficult because they're both so great at what they do. The jazz bass would probably win out if I had to pick both, but like my Spectres have, I get both. So I kind of have the best of both worlds. But if Tommy's backing me in a corner and I got to pick P or J, because the J has more functionality. The P is a one-trick pony, but it's a really good one-trick pony. The J, you can blend the pickups with the individual volumes to get different tones. So I'd probably pick the J just for a little more versatility. I have 2 studio experiences that were really, really special to me, and you'll know why when I go into detail here. The first one would be, I got to play, there's a girl singer named Micah Roberts. Micah was Toby Keith's background singer for many, many years, up until his passing this past year. And I had played on all of Micah's demos. She was the first act that Toby signed to his Show Dog record label. And because I had played on all her demos, I was the only guy who was not an A-team recording guy here in Nashville that got to play on part of her record. And both tracks that I did were duets with Toby. So getting to play on 2 tracks with Toby and Micah that was just a big deal for me, and I'm very grateful that Micah thought enough of me to go to Toby and tell her that she you know, there wasn't much she wanted, but she wanted me on those tracks. So I'm very grateful to you, Michael Roberts. And my other studio memory, and you'll know why when I tell you this one, it's with Dolly Parton. If you go to iTunes and download Crimson and Clover with Dolly and Tommy James, that's me playing on that track. And I played EMGs in an old Charvel San Dimas bass that my buddy Lloyd Prinz built for me. I played that bass with the PJ EMGs, and that's what you hear on that record with Dolly. It was such an iconic moment because I had worked a little bit for Dolly and been around her, but I'd never played on a record. So when I sat down in the studio, they had originally put upright on it, but Kent Wells, my buddy who produces Dolly, he wasn't digging the upright on the Crimson and Clover thing because it's got the, you know, the bass thing in the middle, and it just wasn't. He wanted electric on it. So he calls me up and he says, "Hey, how's your pick skills?" I said, "Well, they're probably not what they should be, but what do you need?" And he's told me, and I was like, obviously I jumped at the chance. So we got in there and did the track, and that's what you hear if you go download that track. Okay, if the pedal police show up in the studio and they're gonna scarf all my pedals but one, you gotta have a tuner. So we'll eliminate the tuner though. If I had to have just one, and you know, it would have to be my Universal Audio 1176 compressor. I've gotten used to playing with compressors, and they're a must for me. If you see me play live anywhere, there's a compressor somewhere in the loop, I can promise you. Do I have a doppelganger? I have two, apparently, Rob Halford and Larry Bird. Now that's funny.